Every day, ordinary people make extraordinary choices as they negotiate unpredictable pathways to the peak of their expectations without ever taking the time to enjoy the view. Join me, Tish Tindall, at this panoramic viewpoint of astonishing personal and professional progress as we find out why my next guest is living the fabulous life. James Pearson, I cannot believe I am finally talking to you. I think I've actually stalked you for some time. Would you agree?
It has been some time, yes. It was when you started knocking on the window, I was like, all right, I'll do it. Okay.
And it was lockdown as well, you know?
It was
I
lockdown. I was
couldn't
like,
help it.
oh,
She shouldn't be travelling out of these
I was in the
zones.
shower as well. I was like, oh my God, you managed to get up. Brilliant.
Well, you know, a girl's got to do what she's got to do. You know that, you're a casting
Exactly.
agent. So where are you this evening?
I'm at home in London. We've just moved, actually. We were in Sussex and we moved into central London during lockdown.
Oh, wow.
But we had planned it all pre this third lockdown. So we had to go through with it, which we're really happy with. But yeah, it was, it was so, we were like, oh, okay, third lockdown. Are we still like, yeah, and like removal people were like, yes, no, it's essential, which it was because we were leaving our house and we had to leave it. And so yeah, but it was crazy. It was kind of like, oh my gosh, on top of everything else. But we're settled in now. My fingers will never recover from all the boxes that we opened. It's like
Oh,
we have too much stuff. But yeah,
but
so
you've managed to fit it all into the house, the new place.
we did a lot of downsizing, a lot of
Okay.
it was very cleansing, hoogie cleansing, that kind of thing.
Oh,
How do you
it's
say that?
fantastic
Yes.
for the soul.
Yes, it is. It actually is. We were like, if we haven't touched it in 2 years, we don't need it. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's been in this garage, but it was very good, really good. So we're in London
Yeah.
now.
Brilliant. And it's lovely to talk to you, in all seriousness, because I've read a lot about you and your career. I mean, you now run this such a successful casting agency, Pearson Casting Agency with your wife Rosie, and but your story is fabulous because you're somebody who actually really knows the industry from both sides, and you started in musical theatre. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, I sort of started quite late, I guess, because I went to drama school. I turned 24 whilst I was at drama school. I went to a place called the London School of Musical Theatre, and I was on the very first year of the course, so 25 years ago, which I can't. That was a blink. I don't know where that's gone.
I know.
So I trained in musical theatre. I wanted to, excuse me, I wanted to learn three disciplines, not just acting. And I sang, I loved music. I sang prior to going to drama school. I was in a band, and that was it. 1 year. It was like 40 weeks, 40-week post grad course, and yeah, and that was the start of it all.
Brilliant. And you know, have you seen many changes in the industry, James, since you've been working in it? Has a lot changed?
Yeah, do you know, someone asked this question the other day, and it's really interesting that the industry as a whole, I don't think has changed much. I think that in terms of like um, its sense of community, its sense of support, um, its sense of quirkiness, because everyone in it is a misfit. And at the same time a control freak. It's kind of, that's how it is. It's really interesting. And But things have changed in terms of the of open conversations about mental health, about diversity, about gender. This lockdown has been very surprising, actually, because so I always felt as though I was a bit of a misfit as a kid. I loved acting. That's all I ever wanted to do. I was a very good sportsman. I was really, like, I can play any sport. Within an hour, I can play it efficiently. But with sport, what was really interesting, I was never very laddie in that way. I never felt, I always felt uncomfortable around the whole kind of acting macho thing. It was really, I'd much rather kind of chill out with my girlfriends. It was much
Yeah.
more fun. And so yeah, and so something that I just thought was standard in the industry, which was acceptance, over this year has really kind of blown my mind, and like things like racism in drama schools. I mean, that just I couldn't, I didn't know what I was reading. And because the arts is where we're all accepted, right? That is the place where
Yeah.
anyone that feels slightly different should be accepted. All race, all ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender orientation. It's kind of like that's, if it's right. That's where we are.
Yeah.
And so it really felt weird over this last 12 months to, through lockdown and through things that we did last year, like the collective creative initiative, and beyond this new discovery that it sort of blew my mind. So I think that's the main difference, is that people have found a voice, which I think is excellent, and they've found that, and over this lockdown period, we have literally gone, do you know what? We have this chance to change it, because the industry has stopped. The things we don't like, we can change, and that's really what's happened. But I guess that, I think things are, there's a lot more work around than when I graduated. There's far more work accessible, in a normal industry, normal
Yeah.
times. Um, Barriers are coming down about things like, if you've performed on a cruise ship or in a park or hotel or things like that. We've never. I've done West End, I've done cruise ships, I've done tours, I've done TV, and I've always just been like, work is work. There is no difference to me,
Yeah.
and that's the way Rosie and I are as casting directors. There's no difference. I don't care. I don't care if you've been at the National Theatre. I don't care if you've been. All you've done is Fringe, because I haven't done the National, but I've done it all, and so I still know that you have to be talented to work on the Fringe or on a cruise ship or in a
Of course.
hotel. So we really look at it that way, and with that kind of, when I graduated, I went to a musical theatre course because I wanted to learn three disciplines. But people really looked down on musical theatre. I mean, it was just so looked down on by other areas of the industry. And it was only as I grew that I realized, oh, it's just jealousy because they can't dance and sing. So actually, they feel threatened by that, and that's really, those are the kind of changes, that seem to have happened. And there's much more a Broadway feel. Social media has highlighted people that aren't stars and made stars out of them as artists in their own right, in the West End or in musicals or music. And they don't have to go on TV show to get that. So social media has allowed that. That's a massive turning point for the industry. So, but the root of it hasn't changed. The root of being an artist hasn't changed. The root of the dedication hasn't changed. The root of, to be successful, you have to work hard. That's it.
Mhm.
There's no, everyone that looks, if you look at someone and go, oh my God, they're so lucky, I guarantee that they've worked really hard to be that lucky. And I've done it again. I was on an interview yesterday, and I said yesterday, oh my God, I keep forgetting. There's a golfer, and I forget who it was, either Arnold Palmer or Gary Player. And I must look it up after this interview. I keep forgetting when I end an interview, and I'm like, I get to the next one, I'm like, I didn't look it up. But he was in an interview. He won his 10th green jacket, golf player, American golfer, and he said, a journalist said to him, hey, Mr. Palmer or Gary Player, who it was, you're really lucky out there today. And the response was, do you know, it's really interesting that the more I practice, the luckier I become. And that's it, really. And it is that simple, that in this industry, if you see someone who's successful, they've worked, as a rule, they've worked really, really hard to get there. You just haven't seen that bit.
And so tell me, I'm really interested in your journey. So you sort of decided to go out of musical theatre, out of live performance, and into this side of the industry. Was there a moment when that happened, or you thought, this is really what I want to do?
Yeah, yes and no. I was around, I was a performer for around 18 years, 18, 19 years. And I was working for Norwegian Cruise Line as a production vocalist with Rosie, with my wife, and it was really interesting. I went away to do one contract on cruises. Somebody I worked with, I was doing a musical with, and they were like, "Have you ever done a cruise?" And I was like, "No, I haven't, but I do want to travel." And they were like, he said, "I think you would love it. I think it's so up your street." And I was like, "Oh, okay. I really want to get out of London." You know, this is a while ago, 15 years ago. And I auditioned. I got one with Belinda King, and it was the Queen Mary 2, and I
Yeah.
did love it. And he was so right. And I ended up doing 13 contracts across different cruise lines, traveled the entire world, learned so much more about my craft because I was working with Americans, Ukrainians, Russians, Canadians, Australians, aerial artists, gymnasts, dancers, singers, and just learnt so much more about the craft because interestingly, each country has kind of their own style. You know, a dancer from Australia or America or
Sure.
the UK, they're very different in their styles from teaching. So I just learned so much. And so with that passion that Rosie and I had about the cruise industry and about how it still got this bad rap, you know, my gosh, work is work. You know, if you wake up in the morning, no matter what you're doing as an artist, if you wake up and go, "I'm fulfilled today and I'm really happy," that's success. That is success right there. Nothing else matters. You know, that's why we would say, don't look left or right. Don't worry about what someone else is doing or what they're saying about what you're doing. If you're happy, that's amazing. You've made it. You're there. You've found, you know, nirvana. It's like, and I know I've worked with people in the West End that were miserable, absolutely hated it. And so it's only until we do something that we realize whether or not it's right for us. But we felt very passionate about that. So we thought, well, why don't we go? I've always been interested in casting. I'd worked as an agent for over a year with Kenny Scott Associates, helping build their book as an agent and because casting was something I was interested in. I thought, well, I also want to look at this side of it, so I have an understanding if I'm working as a casting director what the agent is going through.
Yeah.
And so we were like, well, let's see if we can start casting in the cruise industry. And weirdly, one of the entertainment managers for Norwegian Cruise Line, he was like, "Oh, you know, I'm unsure about the UK, you know," and we were like, "You're doing it wrong." You know, of course you do. You'd sort of make it up, don't you? You're doing it wrong, and they were doing it wrong. So we started with them, and we sort of changed the way they did their casting over here, and made it more successful, and and it just, that was it, and that was the launch of it, and sort of, so 7 years ago, and it's just built up from there really. And it has been so hard to start as because we didn't go through the normal routes of working as a casting assistant and but I'd been in the casting room 1,000 times, so
Yes.
I knew what I didn't like, I knew what I experienced. I'd worked as an agent and I dealt with casting directors, so I knew which ones I liked and which ones were difficult. And so from all of that, Rosie and I sort of built the way we wanted to be casting directors, and worked very hard at that. But of course, you know, this, as the start of anything, just like the start of as being an actor, it's really hard, and it took us a lot of hard work. We did other jobs when we started, you know, to get to where we wanted to be, and
And so, what's really interesting about this is that you said, you know, you encourage people not to look at what other people are doing and don't think about what they think about what you're doing. And this is the biggest mistake that, you know, we make in the creative industries, because it's coming from ourselves, you know. So sort of any criticism or anybody just even talking about it in a way we're not sure of, it really unsettles us. Have you found in your career, James, that there's been a time when, you know, you maybe did listen to somebody who said, "Hold on, you didn't come up through the ranks here, you know, you've jumped into this, you know, who are you?"
no. I've never done that. I've always been that someone that
That's brilliant.
I've always been someone that is very my mistakes are my mistakes. No one else
Yeah.
is to blame, unless, like, a pandemic.
Mm.
But and there have been things like we've cast shows and the producer has gone bust, and that's not our
Yeah.
fault. But and you lose thousands of pounds. You kind of go, well,
Mm.
okay. Apart from that kind of thing, my decisions have been my decisions. My mistakes are my mistakes. They're my learnings. I have made my apologies to the people I have upset, if I ever did. And then you move on. It's only if you repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat, and then that gets a bit dark. But I'm a great believer in, although he's not certainly no flavourer, is Richard Branson. I know he's certainly gone out of flavour now, but his business acumen in terms of the way he approaches something, I do affiliate with. And he says, his thing is, say yes and then learn how to do it.
Oh yeah,
I
absolutely.
have, and I've done that. Oh, James, you tap dance, right? Yes, absolutely. They're like,
Of
"Oh,
course you
great,
do.
okay, cool." And then I go and learn how to tap dance. And that's it. You ride horses, don't you? As my wife says, I run a line between bravery and stupidity. And she always says to me, like, so Rosie is a horse rider. She
Yeah.
rides horses. She knows how to. Yeah, she is a horse rider, and I get on a horse and I go. And it's like I have no training in it, but I'm happy to, like, I love it, and I love horses. And yeah, so it's that thing of like, um very much about, if you're not hurting someone else. And that's not to say I haven't hurt people, because I have, because everyone does. Everyone makes those mistakes, and it's part of your growth as an adult and a human being. You are going to upset people. You are going to do something that is probably not the nicest of things. But that's part of life, and that's what you get on, as long as you don't continue it. But there is that rule that as long as you're not hurting somebody else, I don't really care what anyone thinks of whether or not what I'm doing I should or shouldn't be doing. And I'm talking within a professional manner, and whether,
Of course.
it's like, those things shouldn't hold you back. And often people put things in place to hold you back because they feel as though, well, it should be done this way. Now, that being said, it is important to make sure you know what you're doing. So if you want to be a casting director, and you're 19 years old, you're probably not quite ready.
We're piloting a new performing arts industry degree at the moment, and one of the students on the pilot asked me the other day, how do they stop themselves from being scared about developing a new product? Because part of the degree will be to develop something that you can go on and work with, something, you become an entrepreneur and you're doing something within the creative industry. So you're maybe trying to develop a new show or a book or a radio program, a podcast, whatever. And so the student said to me, how do I know it's going to work? I don't want it to fail. And I said, that's right. We don't know it's going to work, and we don't want to fail, but you have to do it, because you'll only know when you do it. And like you say, the greatness is in doing it. And James, you're so enthusiastic. You could feed off your energy. It's incredible. If you were to look back on everything that you've achieved, and it's a lot, and you're inspiring a lot of people, and what would be fabulous? What would be, what would you look back and say, oh wow, that was fabulous?
I think there are two things. One is getting into drama school. I was in a very dark place. My mother had died the year before of cancer, horrible experience. So when I was 22, and so that launched me into, you've got to fulfill your dreams, because it's all just way too short. Life is way too short. And she wasn't even 60. I mean, it was ridiculous. So
Yeah.
that day that letter arrived, and actually, moving, I was going through some memory boxes and I found my acceptance letter, which I've still
Oh
kept.
wow.
And attached to that, this year, last year, I was given, the college I go to, they give a founders cup, and it's for tenacity within the industry. And I was given it last year, so 25 years in the industry. So that whole kind of rounding off 25 years of getting into that drama school, changing my life forever. and then receiving that Founders Cup. And then the other thing, which I feel is my greatest achievement with Rosie that we did, was launching the Collective Creative Initiative last year, where we won that funding to put on 30 hours of free classes and be able to pay the practitioners for those 6 months. And what we know that did for people was like my greatest thing to date, doing that. So one is for me and one is for other people.
And I think that just kind of is typical of you, it seems, you know, from what I've read of you, and certainly following you on social media and talking to you this evening. You know, you are somebody who has such a zest for life and for doing everything that you can when you can. And I think for people watching this interview, they are going to take from that exactly what you said. You know, do it now, do it while you can, and don't apologize for it unless you have to, you know.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
James,
Absolutely.
all I can say is thank you so much for taking the time, and you know, I didn't ever think it was going to happen, and it's happened, and I'm just
Brilliant.
over the moon. So from me up here in Lossiemouth, James, to you in London, thank you so very much. You are definitely living a
Thank you.
fabulous life.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thanks, James. Menno Meyjes, how are you? I cannot believe you are on this show. Where are you this evening, Menno?
I am a little bit outside of Salisbury, near Stonehenge.
Wow. Is
Yeah.
it cold down there?
It's either freezing or it's raining. So
Now, I know where you live, and it's absolutely beautiful.
that's I shouldn't complain.
No. Well, we're freezing up here in the north of Scotland, and I know you like to go fishing up here from time to time across the water.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So where do you fish normally? Is it where is it, Caithness or?
I always forget the name of that river. It's a well-known river. I go salmon fishing, but I have to say, I think I went up for 9 years. I never, ever, ever caught a salmon.
Do you think you scared them? Why didn't you catch a salmon?
So. It became like a point of pride with the gillies. So they were going to like, hey, I'll take this idiot up the river to that, because even if I have to jump into the water and like put a fish onto his hook, never, nothing, nada.
And did they know who you were? Did they realize who they were talking to?
The fish.
Now listen, since you said you would be kind enough to join me on this show, I've done some research, and I can't pronounce the names of the awards and the nominations and the films and the credits. You know, Menno, you really are, and we have met, and I was as equally as awestruck the last time I saw you. Come on, you wrote the screenplay to The Colour Purple. I still can't deal with this. You know, how did it start, Menno? How did you get into this?
Into what? Into the movie business.
Into writing, and writing such marvelous things.
I went to boarding school in Holland, and they would do this thing for the parents would come over once a year, and it was known as Parents' Day. and I remember, and they'd always have some horrible entertainment on, like a bit of a play or something like that, and I'd sit there and just, as the Italians would say, eat my liver, with like, oh my God, this is so horrible. And then I thought, why don't you try it? Why don't you write something? And I remember it was a kind of fortuitous thing. I remember starting to write what I thought a play ought to be. And the moment I started, I kind of knew that I could do this. I sort of found my métier.
You sort of found it, and you know, it's incredible. I can't begin to reel off the pieces that you have written, been involved in, co-written, you know, produced, directed, the whole thing. What do you think gives you the inspiration to be so creative, Menno?
Oh, I don't feel I am creative at all. I mean, I really don't. I'm not sort of, I'm not being modest because I always think that's what they say about a modest man is that he wants to be complimented twice. But I, I don't really, at this point in my life, I mean, and also for a long time, it's what I do, and I just get up and the only thing I know, it's sort of the only thing I know how to do. So
Yeah.
I just start in the morning and I never feel like it. I never sit there and go, oh my God, I'm gonna write. I read the boxing news and then I say, well, this is so boring.
Not the salmon fishing news, the boxing news.
No,
No
the
salmon
boxing
fishing.
news. No, the boxing news. I look at the boxing. It's always the same story. And then I said, well, now I'm so bored, I might as well start writing. Something like that.
But you
And
know,
then
your career has,
then I just sort of go.
yeah. And then you go for it for hours, days, you
No,
know,
just
is it
for hours. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So I know that I'll write till about, you know, lunchtime, and then that's 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 enough for me.
yeah. And when you're working with a with a book and you're asked to write a screen
Yeah.
play from that, how do you do that? What, you know, where do you start with that? Do you get to know it so well?
Well, I mean, I remember it was like Color Purple. I mean, it was I just underlined it. I remember those were in the days where you still had typewriters, and I
Yeah.
literally had like a paperback copy, and I'd fold it, and I'd have it like stuck, you know, under the typewriter, and I'd be like, looking at it, and yeah, I mean, you do it like the way you think you would, you think, okay,
Yeah.
so what would play in a film? I mean, obviously, you don't want to have too many interior pieces,
Yeah.
because for, for obvious reasons.
And uh, but what I'm interested in is, how did it get to the point that somebody said to you, "Would you write that for The Color Purple?" I mean, what happened
Oh,
for that
well,
to
I mean,
happen?
I honestly, I got a call from my agent, and he said, listen, they've seen everybody in Hollywood for The Color Purple. They might as well see you.
Really?
And that was, that was, that was how it was. But I actually knew about The Color Purple. At this point, The Color Purple isn't The Color Purple yet. It's sort of has this, it's fallen between two stools. It's
Yeah.
not a big it's not a big hit yet. And I also knew about Whoopi Goldberg, who had always been attached because she had been a performer in Berkeley. And so I
Yeah.
kind of knew it. And I remember, I took a cabin in Lake Tahoe, which was, at that point I was living in San Francisco. It was a few hours outside of San Francisco, and I sat there and I read the book, and I just knew, I just didn't think it was a big problem.
Yeah. You just,
I just thought
well,
I mean, I read the first few pages and I thought, well, we'll do these letters as voiceovers. I mean, that's
yeah.
not and we'll hew it as close to the book as possible. And that's kind of what I pitched to them.
And did did you love it, Menno? Do you always love the things that you read that you then go on to write?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to. I mean, I thought it was I thought it was a tremendous book. I thought it had a kind of, it had a great power. I loved the way Alice wrote.
Yeah.
It just was I wrote it in 2 weeks, 10 days maybe.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you just got going and that was it.
Yeah, I just got going. That was it, and Stephen was not supposed to do it. He was going to do Hook. And I just got going with it. And of course I was nervous about it, but I just thought, well, I might as well keep going. If I do have that sort of thing. It's like, I thought, well, either I just now start writing, or this is going to be some kind of psychodrama.
Yeah.
So, with me, like, not saying, oh, smoking tons of cigarettes and not getting started, I just thought, just go. And so I went, and I think I was writing something like 20 pages a day, which is a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, it hurts.
And have you ever been nervous, working with the producers that you've worked with? They're
I'm always,
enormous producers. You're always
I'm always
nervous?
nervous. Yeah, you're always nervous. Honestly, again, I'm not, this is no false modesty, but the person you were talking about at the beginning, I don't recognize at all. I don't know who that person is. It's like, I don't feel that way at all. I always feel nervous. I feel like I've never written anything before. I think most writers will say that. It's
Yeah.
not something, you know, I mean, I have a great friend who's a very well known musician, and he always says to me, I couldn't tell you how I write a song.
Hmm.
It's always like you seem to have forgotten everything. The only thing that you somehow remember is that you finished it the last time, and that
Yeah.
somehow or other turned out all right.
Yeah. And is it ever good enough for you, Menno, what you write?
Well, it's I don't it's I sort of become this other person. I kind of zone out and just go into this slightly different version of myself. So, and when I direct my own stuff, a lot of times I think, oh, well, who wrote this?
Yeah.
Because it's you're just in this other place,
Yeah.
and I suppose the one thing I know how to do is kind of is get close to a dream state.
Yeah.
So I write in a kind of
Yeah.
that's it.
Maybe that's how you should catch your fish as well.
Yeah, yeah, because yeah, you're exactly right. It should all be some kind of dream, you know.
And have you had times when you thought about giving it up, Menno?
Yeah, I'm always thinking about giving it up.
Yeah.
You
What
always
stops you?
well, because you would be so bored, and uh, and and you're always much more afraid that it's going to give me up.
Yeah.
That suddenly people are not at all interested in what you have to say any longer.
But surely that doesn't happen when when your achievements are as wonderful as they are, does it?
I wouldn't say that that's altogether true. People, it's very much an in the now sort of business. I still
Yeah.
work, but people are respectful of what you've done in the past, but that's doesn't hold a lot of weight.
No. And okay, so then the next question would be, is it an awful lot to do with who you know? Do you get jobs because of who you know?
Not really. I mean, I get jobs because, people pick me off a list.
No, stop.
No,
Sure.
true. No, it's true.
Okay, come on now. So you get jobs because people pick you off of a list.
Yeah,
This is some list that they're looking at, yeah?
yeah, but it's absolutely true. I mean, my agents. I've got my agents in London. The Casarotto, and they've got a client list, and then somebody calls from the States or something, and they say, hey, well, who are your clients again? And then they look at this list and they go, oh yeah, that guy. It's like
Good.
that. But I have to say that I'm terribly bad at, like, you know, at like networking.
Yeah, well, we have a performing arts college up here, as you know, and I was telling the students that you were going to be on the show, and they're just all their jaws just dropped. It's as simple as that. So you might not be good at networking, but I think what you have, achieved networks itself. Surely that is something. Surely your work is shouting out to people. You've got to work with this guy. Look at this talent.
Well, like, I mean, I think you should represent me.
I'm not representing your fishing, though.
No,
Okay,
no,
I'm not telling anybody up here in the
I'm the
north of
worst
Scotland
fisherman ever.
about that. And was there any particular script that you worked on, Menno, that you really, really adored?
Um, it's the last one I wrote.
Hmm.
That
Always, always.
yeah, it's always the last one you wrote. I think the big thing about my business is that, I think it's something like Winston Churchill said, is that success is being able to go from disaster to disaster with undimmed enthusiasm.
Yeah.
That I think it almost becomes at a certain point almost spiritual to kind of get it up for it and
Yeah.
believe in it, and come to it like you've never written anything before in your life. And I think that's the most important thing. And not to, I mean, and one's experience isn't as important as the kind of, that esprit that you can
Yeah.
bring.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you ever work with actors, famous actors, and think, I really wish you would deliver that in this particular way?
Yeah,
Do you find yourself thinking that?
yeah, all the time. Not all the time, but I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely. Of course you do. Yeah.
And how does it feel, though? Because, in my small writing experience, sometimes if somebody sings something a particular way and I'm like, that's not what I intended, you know, how does it feel on a much bigger scale?
The same, you just have to kind of, but you're so in that moment. I remember once working, and and people want your input. I remember once working with this very famous actor who was coming to do a scene in a movie, and he was not he obviously got out of the wrong side of the bed that morning. And he sort of said to me, listen, I don't need any direction. I know how to do this. I do this all the time, that kind of thing. I said, terrific. And so for 4 or 5 takes, I didn't say a word. And then he looked over at me and he said, what do you think of that? And that, so, so everybody wants, I think the most important thing is if you tell someone something about that, why you don't like their performance, it behooves you to also listen to them why they're doing it that way.
Yeah.
Everybody wants
Yeah.
to be heard,
Yeah.
and I think if you listen to people and you say, now, why did you do it that way? Or, so, oh, that's interesting. So, what, and then you learn something interesting, and then you understand the vocabulary they're working with. So they'll say something like, well, I just feel that that's the truth of the character. And then, so you think to yourself, all right, well, you know, that's, if I play that back at them, saying, well, I think the truth of the character is, slightly this way or
Yeah.
that. But,
So it's the discussion.
most of the time, you're just in the flow, and by that time, you've already gone through rehearsal, and usually
Yeah.
they're fabulous people, and
And if you were to look back on your career to date, Menno, what would you see that was fabulous?
what would I see that was fabulous? Oh, I think that's an interesting question. What would I see that was fabulous? I don't know. I'm not that great at looking back. I'm very excited about film I'm going to start mounting next year, the Scottish tragedy set in a jail. So, but I suppose, if you really pressed me, it would be, to come at things with a certain amount of enthusiasm,
Yeah.
even though you might have just gotten your ass kicked,
Yeah.
on the last
Yeah.
project or
Yeah.
whatever, I think that's, I appreciate that in other people, and it's an important thing to bring to the party.
Yeah. And that's the quality to have.
Yeah, I think so.
And I just would like to add to that, because during my research, I found a picture of you with Carly Simon, and you were wearing a fabulous suit, and really, so looking back, I would say
so embarrassing.
That is fabulous, Menno. That suit, I'm telling you right now.
Oh God, oh God, these things haunt you.
It is, and it's matching Carly Simon's suit. It's everybody that watches this. You must go and look at this. I stumbled across it on Twitter.
I'm not going to. I think the best thing is for me to just.
You are a gentleman.
Yeah.
Well, Menno, this chat has been as fabulous as I thought it would be. I really would like to say a huge thank you to you from me up in Lossiemouth. Yeah, well, listen, it really was, and I can't believe you're on the show. I am truly humbled, and I know you don't want to hear that, but I am, and you also know how sort of in awe I was when we first met. I think I was in awe so much that I spilt my champagne down your trouser leg. I do believe that's what happened, so I apologize for that.
I don't remember that.
So Menno, darling, thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure.